Hey everybody, Coach Stacy Lynn here. Today we're going to talk about Colossians 3:5 again. If you're new, one of the things I want to tell you is right now I'm doing a series on how to think like Christ from Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 17. And for me, this has actually been a pretty cool series to do because it's helping me to see more the context of what Paul wrote and also giving me some really insight into the things that he taught the church that we really need to revisit today. Believe me, we really do. So I am going to share my screen because I want you to see this. I think this is important. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to share my screen. So I write a Substack blog over at stacylynn.substack.com. And if you haven't subscribed to it, I would encourage you to. It's free. There is a little paid version I update at least once a week for paid subscribers, but this is on my free um, a part. And today's is like called to think like Jesus, remove impurity from your life. All right, so look at the verse. Let's look at the verses again to reiterate this. We're going to look at the NLT and the New American Standard. So put to death the sinful earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. And then the New American Standard. Therefore, consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry. So these are two different translations, but they basically say the same thing. What I'm doing now is I'm actually using the New American Standard Version, and I'm pulling out the words in the Greek here. So, what's interesting though, I'm going to stop sharing here. What's interesting to me about doing this series is that I hear a lot of people gripe and complain that there are no solid Bible studies anywhere these days. And I hear people gripe and complain that, that they're sick and tired of false teachers like Perry Stone and others. But when we give something very solid, biblically accurate, people unsubscribe. And I can tell you, for me, that annoys me. It really, really irritates me that I am providing something that you need in order to change yourself, and people unsubscribe. And I know they unsubscribe because it's not popular. And frankly, I think it's because it convicts people. And yeah, if you want to change, you have to do something, people, to actually change. You can't just go, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lift my hands and pray, oh God, change me. It doesn't happen that way, people. And as a coach, one of the things I have to reiterate here is that, you know what? I'm not your friend. I am a person who wants to see you grow. And that's what this stuff is doing. This is helping you to learn to grow. And part of growth is getting that knowledge, right? So, um, yeah, I'm a little, I've had an interesting day. Let's just say that. Anyway, so let's look at the Greek here. So the Greek word, and I'm not going to say it well, but it's this word right here. It's akatharsia, however you say that. I don't know how to say it. But here's what it means. In the Vine's dictionary, this is what it says. It means unclean or impure. And it's used here of unclean spirits frequently in the synoptics. So that's Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the synoptic gospels, not in John's gospel. It's not used there. And in reference to the birds that they offered up as unclean things, it's figurative of destructive satanic agencies. Also, ceremonial unclean. You can actually click on these verses and you can see where that's mentioned. And morally, including no unclean thing, the unclean things. But here's what really interested me. It was also described this way. suggestive of the fact that sensuality and evil doctrine are frequently associated. Excuse me. Boy, last couple of days, my throat and my mouth have been really dry, so trying to keep them moist so I can talk. So what's really interesting is that these are the verses that are used where this is actually tied to sensuality and evil doctrine. And believe me, people, if there is ever a time that we've lived in life where sensuality and evil doctrine have been completely paired, it is today, as well as it was back then during that time. But today, for sure, if you look at the number of pastors who've fallen sexually, if you look at the number of pastors who actually use pornography, if you look at the number of Christians who use pornography and who are sexually immoral, it's massive. If you wonder why the church is ineffective, this is why. This is exactly why. And yet, Paul rebuked and taught the Colossians, and he's teaching us by virtue of giving it to us in the Bible. And what's interesting here to me, and I share this, I'm sharing this again, is that Paul actually mentions this in quite a few of his works. But I'm going to write here. So it appears that Paul is not only drawing a picture of not being ceremonially unclean, but he's also really talking about being morally impure. And that's tied to sensuality and evil doctrine. And if you think about other world religions who have immoral um, leaders and what they do, there's lots of cults actually. That's one thing. But you can think of them. I'm not going to say them out loud, but you know who they are. It's tied, right? It's evil. So, also, we see many folks using sensuality and sexuality to lure people into false doctrines all the time. And homosexuality is just one area we see that in the church, right? Homosexuality is clearly condemned in scripture. And yet, over the last 20 years, really, we've seen it accepted in the church and celebrated, and it's something God calls an abomination. So, we live it, we see it here in our society. So let's look at some of the scriptures where this word is used. Matthew 23:27, Christ is saying, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanness." Remember, Paul was a Pharisee. He actually called himself a Pharisee of Pharisees. So I'm sure that was, if he heard that, that kind of went and cut to the core of who he was. Romans 6:19, I'm speaking in human terms because of the weakness of your flesh, for just as you presented your members as slave to impurity and to lawlessness, resulting in further lawlessness, so now present your members as slaves to righteousness, resulting in sanctification. Let's talk about that a minute. Paul is telling the Romans to present their bodies as slaves to righteousness, resulting in sanctification. Now, if we go back to where we were talking a couple of days ago about the three tenses of salvation, we have justification, sanctification, and then glorification. You can go to Romans chapter 8, you can read all about that. Okay. Sanctification is what we are living now in the present, right? And so Paul was telling the Romans in that verse that they need to present themselves to righteousness, to be a slave of righteousness instead of uncleanness. I think that's awesome because he also did it here. He mentioned this to the Galatians. Now the deeds of the flesh are evident, which are immorality, impurity, sensuality, and it goes on. Later on in Galatians 5, you'll see he gives the fruit of the Spirit after he lists the deeds of the flesh. In Ephesians 5:3, but immorality and or any impurity or greed must not even be named among you as is proper among the saints. By the way, this word is used 10 times, and I just picked a couple to pull out. All right, now I ended this post by saying, consider how Paul referred to himself as the chief of sinners. I believe it wasn't only because he murdered and imprisoned Christians. I also think it's because he knew exactly how impure he was as a Pharisee of Pharisees. Today, as King David did, I would encourage you to pray and ask the Lord to cleanse you from impurity and to replace that with his mind so that you can think like Christ. And I would encourage you, honestly, to consider again what you're putting before your eyes, right? What are you putting in front of your face constantly that would lead to those impure thoughts, right? Because we all have them. The issue is, do they have us or do we have control over them? And because the fruit of the Spirit is self control, we have the Spirit inside us, then we do have the ability to have self control to overcome this stuff, right? But you have to set up guardrails. Bottom line, you have to do it. You can't just go like that and expect, everything to work out great. You know, I'll tell you, I'm almost 58. I started therapy when I was about 21. That's a long time. And I've worked through a lot of stuff. Man, if you knew me 30 years ago, you would be shocked at how I've changed today. But I speak now from experience and having had those decades of experience behind me and decades of marriage behind me, I can tell you with no uncertainty that the way God has given us instruction and He tells us to live, it's for our own good. It's for our good, you know? Um, and if you want to be a disciple of Christ, part of that is learning to think like Christ. Remember, Jesus didn't have any immoral thoughts. He didn't have any impure thoughts. He was perfect. And we are made in his image, people, which means that we have the ability to live these pure lives if we set our mind where it's supposed to be. So today, I just want to encourage you again, there is forgiveness for everything that we've done wrong if we ask. And there is hope. But a lot of this sanctification process, this is a day by day, a minute by minute thing that we're working out here. This isn't going to happen overnight. In fact, Amy Grant has a song called Overnight that I think she sang with her kid. Um, and I love this song because good things don't happen overnight. They just don't. It takes time, people. So I hope this is encouraging you. If it is, let me know in the comments, hit like, feel free to share it. And I look forward to seeing you in another video. And don't forget to catch up on all the other previous lessons in this series in the playlist. And I hope you have a better day, people, because, it's going to be a good day, people.